Hello and welcome to Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm Becky Parker Geist and I'm your host. Audiobook Connection is your place to learn about the audiobook creative process in discussions between the authors, narrators, producers, and post-production teams that bring them all together, as well as guests who have listened to the audiobooks and have questions for the creative teams. This podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Hi, I'm Becky Parker Geist. I'm the host of the Audiobook Connection podcast, Behind the Scenes with the Creative Teams. I'm also president of Bay Area Independent Publishers Association and the CEO and founder of Pro Audio Voices and Amplify Audiobooks, providing audiobook and podcast production, distribution, and marketing. And today I have with me Brian Panosian, author of How to Master the Art of Being the Worst Salesperson. Brian is a sales growth strategist, celebrated for propelling teams to unprecedented success, leveraging 4 decades of experience with Fortune 50 giants like Procter & Gamble and Cisco Systems. As the visionary founder of Silver Comet Consultants, Brian empowers sales professionals to achieve executive relevance, pose transformative questions, and craft strategic close plans that deliver measurable results. Brian, welcome.
Thank you. Very excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, let's just jump right in with the title, How to Master the Art of Being the Worst Salesperson. Tell us about how you came up with that as the title and why.
Well, I never set out to be an author at all, and I knew that there has to be 10 million how-to sales books out there in the world to do things the right way. So I thought if I'm going to do this, I kind of tapped into a little bit of my antagonistic behavior at times. And I said, okay, I'm going to write this kind of a book, all the disasters in sales, and then back it up with best practices. So it was my attempt at some humor based on true stories, and then also sharing back things that have been proven best practices that I've used. I've seen other use enterprise level sales and things that have been very successful for other people and are now best practices.
That's great. Well, tell us a little more about your background and how you obviously have been in sales and for some time now have been developing, understanding these best practices. Tell us more about what got you started in your career.
Sure. The first real job I ever had was at Procter & Gamble in their surgical products division. And I was a young 22-year-old kid selling in the operating room, which is extremely nerve-wracking, being in an environment that you see on TV. But Procter & Gamble was really a great foundation for me to learn the basics of selling. And then as I progressed throughout my healthcare selling career, I was really lucky enough to have people that saw me maybe as a raw talent, but then began to shape me. And I'm really a byproduct of my 5 closest influences in my life. And so it was a 22-year run in healthcare, and I enjoyed it. I thought that was the place to be. I was traveling a lot. I had, at that time, 4 young children, and I got a call to interview at Cisco Systems. And that was in 2005. The problem was I didn't know anything about Cisco, the CISCO systems. And I'm not making this story up to make it sound better for the podcast, but I interviewed with a woman named Ellen Lale. And it basically went like this: Brian, we think we want to hire you. I said, no, you don't. I don't know anything about technology. I don't know anything about networks. No, but we really want to hire you. I said, no, you don't. I'm probably not your guy. But she was persistent. And I think the reason is that when I did come to the interview, all my references were hospital C-level executives. So a CEO, a COO, CFO. And she said, this is an area that we're not the best at Cisco at that moment in time. I said, yeah, but I don't know anything about your technology. I really don't know a packet from a port. She said, I'll take care of all that. And so I defied all the laws of proper interviewing, and I still got the job. The irony of the story is that I was hired on March 28th, which is also my wedding anniversary. So every March 28th, I call Ellen and tell her, thank you. I cannot believe you hired me. I would not have hired me. I later progressed into a leadership role at Cisco and look back at those days and I'm thinking, man, she really, really saw something in me that I didn't see. So that's how it came to be.
That's amazing. When you were, before you got that job at Procter, were you, Procter & Gamble, were you already interested in sales? Or was that something you thought, yeah, this is something I want to pursue as a career?
I think so. I knew I wasn't going to be an accountant. I wasn't going to be a pilot. I wasn't going to be anything that required a really high GPA. And I thought sales was the quickest path to a job, which was then a path to making money. So I didn't have any other desires at the time other than just to get out and get a sales job. I thought that was what.
Yeah. And so at some point you decided to write a book. What was the inspiration? What triggered that moment for you?
I have no idea, except that I was flying on a plane. And whenever I'm on a plane, when my kids were little, I was writing a letter from dad. And I did that for years and years and years and put it in a folder. And I thought, sometimes I have these just unexplainable moments of inspiration and creation. And maybe I'm a little more creative than I thought. So I just started writing the stuff down on paper. And I didn't know how to write a book. I didn't know anything about double spacing. I didn't know anything about that. But I wrote down all these words. And then I had somebody say, well, put it on a on your computer from paper, and then let's take a look at it. So the short run-up all this is that I wrote about 20,000 words. Somebody who knows what they're doing read it and said, you might have a book here, but we need more content. And everything was based on true stories. So after 4 years, a gentleman by the name of Charles McNair helped me through this process. I submitted a book for publication. I didn't know anything about the process of publication, didn't know anything about audiobooks at the time. Here we are talking. But I actually wrote a book. And it was one of those things where I'm historically great at starting something, but never finishing it. So I was committed to finishing this daggum project. And sure enough, I did. And it showed up in print. It's been kind of fun.
Yeah, well, that's good. And so how long were you in the process of basically learning all the skills? How far along in your career before you got that message on the airplane to start writing stuff down?
Good question. So in 2001, 2002, Cisco had an offer for if you had enough age and enough seniority in the company, you could get a package to leave. And so that's when I started my consulting business, which is something I've always wanted to do because I like to coach people and I like to enjoy the work-life balance at that point in my life. And that's where I had this time on the plane. And that's when I started to write things out. If I was still at Cisco, I would never have time to do this kind of a project because, Cisco typically is a 5-6 day a week job and many hours a day, it can be a lot of fun, but it doesn't leave a lot of time for other stuff. So it wasn't until I left Cisco that I have time to do this project. And that's when the spark came.
Yeah, that's so cool. So tell us a little bit about, for those people who are listening to this podcast, but haven't yet listened to your audiobook or read your book yet, tell them a little bit about, what is that you've got in there. And then also just maybe like one reason why they might especially enjoy taking a listen.
Okay. I think what's in there are all true stories, and I hope they make you laugh. They are cringe-worthy. They are things that have happened to other people, things that I did. Now, I did not put any names in there that would embarrass anybody. I wouldn't do that. But these are all true stories. And more people that have read the book said, oh, I remember something like that happened to me, or I did the same thing. Oh, I can't believe this happened to someone else. So that's the premise of the story in terms of why people seem to like it versus, hey, here are the 5 things you have to do, every day to be successful. But some of the takeaways are pretty interesting because it's all about what it takes to build your craft as a salesperson. And it's not about tips, tricks, and techniques. It's about almost like the things AI can't teach you to do. AI can't teach you to read a room.
Right.
AI can't teach you to pick up the emotional vibe of a conversation. AI can't and this is not a complete knock on AI because it's always going to be part of our lives today. But when it comes to building trust and doing the right kind of discovery and how to anticipate things as someone who's a high performing salesperson or leader, that's how you build trust. And that's part of the takeaway, is that what can I do to continually get better and better and better? And my hope is that when they read the book, they get one or two things out of it. They go, you know what, I'm not giving my opinion because nobody really cares about that. But when I shared an experience, people seem to listen more. Just like with my kids, if I give my opinions to the kids, they're like, yeah, Dad. But when I say, hey, Dad did this when I was a kid, I stole Mom and Dad's car, Grandma and Grandpa's car, and went on a joyride. Oh, you did? Oh, tell me more about that. Right. So that's kind of the approach that I took.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Storytelling is so much, I think there's just so much value in taking that more of a storytelling approach, and also humor. I feel like humor just opens us up to learning and makes us receptive in ways that a lecture just won't.
Yeah, it's funny you said that because in the book is a little blip on when you're laughing, you have one of the highest retention rates, which is why people can recite funny lines in movies from 20 years ago or go to a comedy shop and recite a joke. There's something about the joy of laughter and how it frees your mind from everything else.
Yeah. Joy is powerful, I have to say. Yeah. And so some of the things that you share about in the book, things that you've learned, why would you say that those are important to you personally?
I'm kind of a connector by nature. I kind of learned that later on. But, I like to connect one person with another person that might help each other out. I like to connect people with an idea, or if some young professionals come to me and say, hey, help me understand how I can do this. Well, I'll try to help them. I'll say, look, I'm going to also connect you with somebody else. I enjoy that. So in sales, when you're working an account, you can never know too many people in your account. And that's some things what I express in some of the companies I talk to about their salespeople. The more people you know in your account, the more you're going to learn. And the more you're going to build trust. And if you keep calling on the same person over and over and over again, you're not going to learn new things. And you're probably going to ignore a lot of people along the way when they see you calling on the same person over and over again. So one of the things I talk about is something that was a best practice at Cisco. And the 4 letters are W, Y, M, N. And if anybody at Cisco is listening to this, they're going to know what it is, because it's a measurement that I started when I was a leader at Cisco, and it's who you met new. And I would tell the team, go out and meet new people in the account. I don't care who it is. It could be the CEO, the guy that shines the shoes, anybody. Just come back week to week and tell me who you met new. It sounds pretty easy until you put it in practice.
Yeah.
But here's part of the best practice you asked about. Here's what we learned about. We learned about new projects. We learned about things in other parts of the business that we could help the client with. And we went from knowing 2 people in the account to over 400 people. And so that whole connector thing came back, and that I began to introduce people in the company that didn't know each other. We began to see things. We began to build trust. So that's really a very simple concept to understand. It's how you do it. Can be a challenge, but those that do it will be very, very successful.
That's awesome. I love that. I am also somebody that loves connecting people, of connecting different people that that I feel like, they might be able to be helpful to each other. They might just like to know each other. And it just feels so good. So being part of the community building, right?
Yeah, it's part of a give back. I like it.
Yeah, definitely. So Brian, let's just take a short pause, and we're going to come right back and talk more about your book and audiobook. How to Master the Art of Being the Worst Salesperson. Funny Failing to Eventual Success is a humorous yet insightful collection of true, laugh-out-loud business stories that expose the unfortunate and often cringe-worthy realities of poor sales practices. Featuring contributions from senior executives at Fortune 50 companies, this book illustrates how misguided sales and leadership decisions can lead to disastrous outcomes for both the individual and the company. But don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom. The author lightheartedly shows how understanding and correcting those mistakes can lead to extraordinary success. Get your copy of How to Master the Art of Being the Worst Salesperson by Brian Panosian, narrated by Martine Baruch on Amplify Audiobooks today. So tell us a little bit about what your aspiration with your book is going forward. Like, what would you like to have happen?
Well, what I would have liked to have happened did happen. I did sell one book, and so one book has sold. So I've achieved that goal. I've actually sold a lot more. But honestly, the book was nothing more than I said before, to try to get something done. Now it's part of, as a consultant, everyone seems to have a book. You need to have that as, kind of an arrow in your quiver. But I like it when people read it and use it and maybe make things better in it. It's theirs to have and to share with other people. And I love getting the reviews back from people that I don't know that read it. Yeah, I've had some friends that have read the book and put a nice review in, but there are many reviews of people I don't even know. And that means a lot to me. That kind of validates what I'm doing. And then the second part is that when my clients kind of hear through me, through my consulting, how I'm doing things, when they say, well, that's different, and I haven't heard that before, that makes sense to me. I like that. That's when you think you're hitting the mark with what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. So it sounds like you are now in that position of a consultant or mentor kind of relationship, where you had mentioned earlier that you had 4, I think, mentors or people that helped guide you in the process of your career. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So is there anything about I also have a mentor that has been really transformative in my career. And so I find that is a really, can be really, really valuable and powerful. What would you say is, for you, is one of the things that stands out as one of the greatest benefits of having a mentor in your life, whether you call it a mentor or a consultant or, someone that you can turn to?
I wish this was my saying I created, but it's like, show me your 5 closest friends and I'll show you your future. That is really a true statement. In my sense, I had people at different stages of my career, when I look back on it, beyond that crazy interview process, I look back at the time people spent with me, that they invested in to help me become better, and corrected me when I needed to be corrected. Or the term coaching wasn't big back, when I first started, but that's what they were doing. And I think that's important, to have different people along the way that you can trust, but also you listen to and allow them to challenge you. And I still enjoy that today. I even like having people that, come up to me and, hey, Brian, have you considered this? Or I like this part, but have you thought about that? I really enjoy that. I'm not offended by it. There's a saying that, you can get bitter or you can get better. And I love to get better at what I do. And so criticism doesn't make me bitter. It tries to make me better. And so that's, whether it's an advisory thing, but I think if you don't have mentors in different parts of your life that you can believe in and trust, it might take you a little bit longer to figure things out.
Yeah, I agree. And then coming back to like what people can get from your book, your audiobook, what kind of impact would you like your book to have in the world? What would you like your audience, your listeners, to be able to gain from their experience?
I've never had this question before, so I'm answering it with about 3 seconds of prep time. But I think there's something very sustainable in it, not just for your business relationships, but in your personal relationships. And let me give you an example. There's a whole section about something I've created called killer questions. Asking really thought-provoking questions to your clients so you can learn things. But it also helps to listen when you do that. And I think we get so excited to talk that we forget to listen. That happens over maybe at a Thanksgiving dinner with a lot of people around the table. But I also think it's great for your interpersonal relationships when you can ask a lot of questions and listen. And I still have to coach myself on that, even with my wife, to make sure that I don't get all amped up and I got to say something before it leaves my brain.
Right. Yeah.
Listening is great, but it can also be really great when it's tied to a great question you ask somebody. And I think that takes the whole depth of being conversational to a different level. And part of being a great conversationalist is being a great listener. So I think that hopefully that's sustainable. It's been sustainable for years. They said John F. Kennedy was a great listener, that he was always present in a conversation, which I learned that through listening to another type of book on him. And so I think some of the great leaders are great listeners. And I think some of the best sales leaders are great listeners. And I think the best salespeople are really good question givers and listeners, because sometimes salespeople have this pent up energy that I've got to talk and the customer is going to love to hear what I have to say. I know they can't wait for me to talk forever. And of course, the opposite is true. And so that's one of the things that I do talk a lot with my clients about.
Yeah. And speaking of listening, let's talk a little bit more specifically about the audiobook. So your narrator, Martine Baruch, recorded the audiobook. As you think back to when you first were making that casting decision, what was it that, if you can remember, what was it that stood out to you and made you think, yep, that's the guy?
Well, again, like I've never done this before, just like writing a book. And I listened to, I think you submitted maybe 10 different voices that I could listen to. But there was something in his delivery that I thought could bring the humor forward. And I give him a lot of credit, because the first pass, I don't think nailed it, but just kind of like the bitter, better thing. He said, let's try it again. And I said, have fun with it. Own it, drink a beer and have fun with it, kind of a vibe. And boy, he came back and absolutely knocked it out of the park. Even I don't know if this was weird or not, but as I was listening to one of the first 2 chapters of my book and my words, I was laughing.
That's great. Yeah.
That's kind of weird. I know it's weird or a cool thing, but
yeah,
I was laughing. So that was a genuine laugh, not a fake laugh, but I was laughing. So I enjoyed that part of the process very much. And that's when I chose the voice. I thought he could do it, and I think he did it.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. Yeah. Is there anything that, because many of our listeners to the podcast are authors and, thinking about getting their books into audio, I like to provide different people's personal experiences around the audiobook production process. Is there anything that sort of stands out to you that you would like others to know about the audiobook process so far?
Well, it's all been a learning experience. And if I do it again, I'll be excited to do it again with a little bit more knowledge. But I'm glad we're doing it the right way. I know that there are all these AI voice things out there. And I can't tell you how important it is to have a real voice telling your real story. And it's almost like I said earlier, AI can't read a room. AI can't read the vibe. You want your story to be visceral to you, even if you're not the one reading it, another person is reading it and can bring home that messaging, a professional voice. And to those listening to this podcast, I'm not being prompt to say that at all. And I've listened to an AI generated book and it misses things. It completely misses things, and I completely disengage from the message. So I've enjoyed the process. You've been true to your word. Everything you said was going to happen is happening. You got a great team around you. So I would not think twice to recommend Amplify, and I wouldn't think twice to call on you again to do it. But it's been very interesting. I thought about doing it myself. Like, Dad, you going to read it yourself? And I thought, I don't know. But I did the preface, and I did one mini chapter that took me like 3 hours. And I thought, how in the world would I ever do all these chapters the right way? There's no way. I'd still be doing it today. So I'm glad I did it the way I did it. I'm glad I did it with you guys.
That's great. Thank you very much. And how can our listeners learn more about you and your writing? Would you like to share your website?
Sure. It's Slover Comic Consultants. The best way to find me is either there or LinkedIn or my email is bpanosian, BPANOSIN @outlook.com. I'm easy to find. I'm probably not as robust on social media as my kids tell me I need to be, but I do like the one-on-one interaction. And if you want to talk to me, just call me or email me. I will post things occasionally on LinkedIn, but I'm not an everyday poster. I just want the content to be real and robust when I do post it.
Yeah, great. Well, again, this is Brian Panosian, author of How to Master the Art of Being the Worst Salesperson. And you can get the audiobook wherever audiobooks are sold, but we encourage you to get it on Amplify Audiobooks, where it will have the most benefit to Brian and support the work that he's doing. His website, again, is silvercometconsultants.com. Brian, thank you so much for being with me today.
It's been a blast and a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us for Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. Please take a moment to subscribe at audiobookconnection.com. The podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Learn more at proaudiovoices.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and please join us next week.